Good evening, Dr. Barker and class. My name is Shaquante Kellum, and today I'm going to be presenting to you all my interpersonal communication project. Throughout this video presentation, I'll be referring to the slides in my PowerPoint presentation if you're able to follow along at the same time. Let's get started. Slide 2 gives an outline of my presentation and will incorporate and tie in some of the things that I'm going to be talking about during this video. Slide 3 starts us off with our introduction to several of the texts that we utilize throughout the course. The class covers various dynamics of communication and is taught in a Christian perspective. Utilizing elements of our faith, we incorporate them along with communication and find a mutual balance of how to use the two in this profession. Some of the texts include Listening, the Forgotten Skill by Burley and Allen, Bridges Not Walls by Jon Stewart, Why Don't We Listen Better? Communicating and Connecting in Personal Relationships by James Peterson, which was my personal favorite for the course, and How to Solve the Puzzle, Understanding Personality Patterns, which introduced us to behavioral blends, which I'll discuss later. So, what is interpersonal communication? The term interpersonal labels the kind of communication that happens when the people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of communication. What that means is, let's break that down a little bit further and discuss communication. Communication is the exchange of feelings and information both verbally and non-verbally. It utilizes dialogue. Perfect example of this was Jon Stewart's analogy of inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling would be receiving the message, which would be the listener, and exhaling is speaking, which is the talker of the conversation, thus creating the dialogue. Slide 4 gives you all a brief, overview of my overarching goal. My overarching goal is to understand my weakness in my communication to create positive relationships and encourage others to share their thoughts and feelings without feeling judged. When I say that, I think my biggest hurdle with this is going to be learning to really listen during a conversation, and not just to the words, but to things that are happening around me or things that the speaker is doing when they're talking, such as, recognizing body language, facial expression, and other nonverbal cues. Stewart on page 14 of the text states that a great deal of fuzziness can be placed up and many unhealthy choices can be revised when a conversation starts with some shared understandings about the assumptions behind what is being said, which kind of flows right into enlarging the conversation. Enlarging the conversation to me means being willing to understand, listen, and respond to a perspective other than your own. Meaning, if you and I are having a conversation and you're explaining to me how you're very angry and upset and you feel like your boss doesn't appreciate you, I have to not just put myself in a boss position and say, well, maybe if you did do this better, or if you had turned this in on time. Instead, I have to take a step out of being that boss role and put myself in the position of you or an employee to really understand that conversation. Enlarging the conversation defined simply states that it involves in various dynamics of interpersonal communication that work in sync. Those dynamics include empathetic listening, nonverbal communication, and self-disclosure. Stewart states on page 6 of the text, there's a direct link between the quality of your communication and the quality of your life. That statement tells us that our backgrounds, our personalities, and our identities shape how we communicate, which is going to take us into slide 7 in just a few to focus on my background, which affects my communication. However, I wanted to share with you all, as stated by Edwards, cited by Bodie 2011 on page 5. Notion that communicators must make sense of messages by choosing from the available meanings. To suggest that listening is more than an interaction are not likely to the degree to which a listener can recall the specific words of an interlocutor, but rather the degree to which that listener takes away one or more interpretations of those words based on a variety of antecedent conditions. What that means is, today, in today's society, many people are forgetting how to listen. We're forgetting to take in what it is that the speaker is saying, because we're simply listening basically to allow the person to vent instead of making sense of what it is that they're saying to us and really grasping and understanding the meaning of what is being said. Especially with mainstream media and social media today, we're getting lost in a lot of communication because we're texting, we're IMing, we're Snapchatting, we're doing all these things now where we're not communicating face to face. So, my background: I was born and raised on the Eastern Shore of Virginia. I grew up in a single parent household, very family oriented. We had a lot of gatherings, holidays, Sunday dinner. I am the oldest of 2 children. I have a younger sister. We're 6 years apart. I am a single, independent mother of a young man by the name of Jamar Jr. And my current job or profession is a therapeutic day treatment counselor in the Norfolk Public County School System. In the future, I hope to become a licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health professional, as well as a registered play therapist. All in which I'm going to need to improve my communication and listening skills to better serve my population. So, to really break down a little bit more about myself, I have my behavioral blend, which we learned about the first week of class in the Carbonell text. The behavioral blend is 4 personality quadrants in the DISC profile. D is active and task-oriented. I is active, people-oriented. S is passive and task-oriented. And C is passive and task-oriented. I am a behavioral blend of dominant, inspiring, and cautious. I'm active in task orientation and can handle pressure well, but I'm also passive in task orientation. I like to research and investigate the facts as well as fulfill my dreams. I'm active in people orientation. I tend to do well in large or smaller settings. I prefer smaller settings. I prefer to tackle difficult tasks after preparing and planning. However, I am a bit of a procrastinator, so sometimes, hey, I'm a work in progress. So that's a little bit about my behavioral blend. On slide 9, I have some positive characteristics as well as negative characteristics that you all will be able to view. One positive about myself is that I feel like I communicate well in public. One negative is that I'm very impatient with others. I tend to get tired of listening after a point. I'm like, okay, well, this is what it sounds like you're saying without really hearing the entire message, which is a potential barrier. So on slide 10, I have some potential barriers from the text. Stewart has difficult or challenging conversations. That is definitely a barrier for me. Burley and Allen mentions rescuing others. I tend to listen to give advice to try to save someone from being hurt or making a wrong decision. And my personal barrier that I came up for myself was listening to give advice and advise instead of recognizing and considering the feelings of others. Peterson states on page 116, in a tense situation where you need to say what you think and feel, literally point your finger at yourself to remind you not to accuse, attack, label, or judge. And I often practice this now that it's been brought to my attention. Noise pollution. I didn't mention this as a potential barrier because I feel like this is something that everyone struggles with. Noise pollution, as stated by Burley and Allen, are factors that influence us to be distracted from listening effectively at level 1. There are 2 types, internal and external. On slide 12, I give examples of internal noise, one being emotional listening, and the solution would be not allowing past experience dictate how you listen to an individual. External, on slide 13, gives several examples. One would be loud traffic noises or distractions in scenery. Just simply find a simple, quiet, peaceful place. This leads me into my plan of action of how I plan to tackle these barriers and achieve my overarching goal. I plan to focus more on the speaker, listen with intent, reflect, clarify, and paraphrase. Show empathy by acknowledging the speaker's feelings, be more aware of mine and others' nonverbal cues during conversation, and most importantly, reflect on what I've learned throughout this course and simply apply it. I leave you all with a quote by Rachel Naomi Remen. The most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we can ever give each other in our attention. A loving silence often has far more power to heal and to connect than the most well-intentioned words. I wish you all the best and thank you so much for tuning into my presentation. Have a good night.